So, yeah, we are getting not close to the end of the term here, but it's marching up. Term project, you should be working on it. Just like I said, for the final, we're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to do a review. The For the students, well, for either class. I mean, I make it flexible for everybody, right? If some students like to take a class in person, like the distance people, so you're probably going to see a few extra people in here, which is fine, because they prefer to do that rather than on the e-learning. If you take it on the RP now, it's like remote proctor. It has some flexibility, but also has some glitches, and it's not always the best situation. So, or maybe somebody in here, I mean, you may not even know, but there's going to be somebody with a issue who can't show up to class, and I can slide them over to the RP now. So students go back and forth either way. It really doesn't matter as long as it's the same test, same time limits, same everything. So anyway, project should be, you should have a pretty good out, and the deal with the project is I don't have a specific due date other than it's due before the final, just as the homework is. It's all time management. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said I always planned ahead. I usually do stuff the last minute, but there are some people who are very organized, and they're probably smarter than those of us who don't. And they would do it like in the next week or two, and when finals week came, they wouldn't have, two things to do. They'd have just the final. So anyway, it's up to you, but it's all about personal finance, because what we're going to talk about tonight is some retirement planning, and I'm not trying to be over the top pessimistic. This isn't some AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, where the world's going to end in 11 years. But I'm telling you that society-wise, financial planning, things are not going to be good in the future. I mean, I'm not like rolling in money, but I've got enough money to where I can go, okay, I'm off to Costa Rica now. You guys had fun, because this looks like a lot of chaos here. But I mean, just in your own lives. I mean, you look at people who are, they have kids, and who's raising them? The grandparents. It's that middle generation right now that's older than you and younger than me that's maybe not pulling their weight. And when they hit retirement age, I mean, the wheels are going to come off the bus. And people who are not prepared are not going to be doing well. And it's not necessarily their fault. Wages have not kept up with inflation. You get two political parties out there that are both in favor of it's supply and demand. It's not political. It's supply and demand. If you have unlimited labor supply, wages are not going to go up a bit. And you've got one side that wants new voters. You've got the other side, the Republican side, that's not all of them, but the Chamber of Commerce side that wants cheap labor. And so wages are going to be stagnant, and people are just going to be eking out a living. It's just not going to be pretty. So going into retirement and doing other things in life, if you do any planning at all, if you put aside a little bit of money and stuff, you're going to be very much the exception, and you're going to be probably more in a defensive mode as everybody else is kind of hating it. Social Security, I mean, this is a perfect example. There is no lockbox. You've got a Social Security account, but there's not like money personally being set aside for you. Politicians routinely go in there and raid that, and so it's based upon it's almost like a pyramid scheme we were talking about, where more people are paying into it, and that was the fake, the situation with the baby boomers, where you had so many baby boomers out there working and fewer number of retirees. You're going to be in a situation where those baby boomers are now all going in retirement, and the working people are not as plentiful, and so it's going to be distorted, and there's all sorts of other things that happen with it. So, it does not provide adequate income to solely support most people. I mean, that's a polite way of saying it's going to be rough. Now, again, plan B for me, if I'm not having to work, I'll go, be the richest man in my village in some distant place, and I'll be just fine. But if you're going to try and eke it out here in the States, and especially here in Alaska, where the cost of living is a little higher, Social Security is going to be rough. So, enough said on that. Yes, please.
It's a little off topic from what
we
were just talking about.
No, that's...
Looking on Blackboard right now, I see that the homework due that we had for the first, before the first exam goes to week 7, which is chapter 12.
Yeah.
And then there's only the week 6 video for comment, and then the index fund.
Yeah, there's
part.
the homework is kind of out of balance. The homework with the expectation that you're putting some time into the term project. So no, the homework and especially the distance, people will notice this. The videos have been cut down substantially because I will put out the this is what's due before the final term. But yeah, that's kind of sort of by design.
Okay.
To make the emphasis. I mean, seriously, you'll do homework and all that other stuff, and it's all good and it's productive stuff. But if you really put something into the plan, you'll get a good grade. But also, you'll kind of look at things like this. You'll part of your plan when you're doing that term paper. You'll look at Social Security. You can go in there, the website. I mean, the federal government's more than happy to tell you that don't rely on us totally, because it's probably not going to work out the way, if you want to be in the dark eating ramen, it's that's no way to go through life. So anyway, to answer your question, it does taper. The homework, the routine assignments taper on the second half of the term.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Perfect. Survivors benefits. So again, there's all sorts of different strategies that will change by the time you get there. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this. I mean, they're the retired folks for Social Security. They can take it as soon as they turn whatever age, and then they can, 62ish or 67, or they can wait till later and they can take it and get a little bit more and all the rest of that. But the rules, it's not a fixed process, and it's currently not means tested, but it probably will be means tested, meaning that if you have some sort of financial resources, you may actually be excluded for Social Security. I'm finally to the point of actually finishing my taxes now. All I can say is, my God, I'm glad I'm a farmer. I owed $7,000 until I actually took it till the end and started putting all the farm stuff on there, and now I'm actually about neutral. So that's where you want to end up. If you're getting a big refund, you are not getting one over on the government. You have given them a huge loan, for that whole year. So people who think, oh, I always get money on my taxes, I'm doing things. No, you're I don't want to use too pejorative language, but yeah, you're not the sharpest.
What do you think about the tax changes?
Well, it's funny. I've got a lot of brothers and sisters who are down in California specifically, and they're getting clobbered because, the SALT, the state and local taxes, are now not tax deductible for them. Now, other people thought, well, I'll be getting a bigger refund this year. But some of those people don't understand how the tax system works, because not as much money was withheld. What happens is your amount of money due at the end of the year is based upon how much you owe. And so the tax code is known the year prior, and so the government will withhold money from your payroll to essentially pay your taxes that should be due at the end of the year. So they estimate. So that's all baked in. The reason why people aren't getting a bigger refund this year is because hopefully they didn't have as much withheld. But yeah, it's always, the government's still spending, well, again, now I'm getting totally political, but spending way too much money on silly stuff, and it's not good. But more is better in terms of more taxes. I have more faith in you all than I do, and I think you can do better work with your money than the government can with it. So, but I think 80% of us kind of feel that way. You can be conservative, you can be libertarian, you can be whatever. There's only a few folks who think that the government can do a better job with the money than they can. But that's more off the subject. We can differ on that. But this, in terms of personal finance, and being prepared for it, and also you got to, like I say, I come from one side of the political spectrum, but I'm more than happy to take advantage of any tax cut that's out there, because that's the game that's played. It's like I said at the first part of the term, we're all just rats trying to get government cheese. If they put a benefit out there, I'm not going to go, well, that's not right. I'm going to jump right in like everybody else, you know. So, and that's the reason why it's put there. It's not put there by mistake. It's put there as incentive to encourage whatever sort of behavior. So, again, getting back to Social Security, depends on your income. You know, you pay for certain years. There's certain segments of society like railroad and other folks who don't actually pay into Social Security. But they're talking about providing 40% of your annual income. So that's not, that's not 100%. If you're trying to live on 40%, that's where we're talking a very diminished lifestyle. Reduced benefits beginning at 62, but you can wait till later. So that's what I was talking about as well. But again, this is not cut in stone. This is, one congressional action away from being completely unmandated. Not that people are wanting to change this. People, old folks tend to vote. So Social Security tends to be good, but it doesn't tend to be forward-looking because, screw the people who are nowhere near retirement because they don't vote and we want ours. And anyway, so you can earn limited income while receiving Social Security, which is a positive. I think people do live longer if they stay engaged and stay working and all the rest of that. So there's been some changes. Concerns about the retirements. Retirees living longer. Retirees come. This is demographics. And many people are relying less on Social Security and establishing their own retirement programs. That's out of necessity, unless you want a very meager lifestyle. That's kind of what you got to do. So, SSA.gov, Social Security Administration, and you will go there as part of your paper if you want to, fully explore it and get a good grade. You'll go there and then they've got little helpful calculators and things like that. And it's, it depends what you want out of life. But if you think, I don't have to worry about retirement because I've got Social Security, you're probably going to be pretty disappointed. Social Security also, like I said, there's a lot of manipulation going on with some of the long-term disabled people that are, our age or younger, who there's a Social Security is a federal program. There's a, call it what you want, but the states have incredible financial pressure to get people off welfare rolls. If they can qualify them for federal disability, then they can kind of wash their hands. So that's what's happened to Social Security as well. And I've talked to you before, you can look on, if you watch a lot of bad TV, if you're watching like Chips or something, you'll see they used to be out there, Bender and Bender, the guys with the cowboy hats. They get $1,500 per person from the state for anybody they can convert from, welfare, state welfare, to federal disability under Social Security. So that has a pretty negative influence on Social Security because it's all the same account. So, better news. So, employee-sponsored retirement programs. Unfortunately, they aren't quite as prevalent. Full, like you're going to go to work for GM and you're going to get this retirement and you're set for life and it's a defined benefit program. Now, more or less, it's more of a independent type thing where you've got sort of self-directed. They've got a number of plans and you put it out there and they probably have some sort of match. Most companies will have let's say you're making $100,000, and they've got a match program where you put in 4% and they'll match it with 6%. So you put $4,000 towards your retirement and they'll put $6,000 towards. So now you've got 10%, and that's going towards your retirement. So for you, if you're the guy making $100,000, you say, well, I'm going to do something else with my money. You're actually working for less than your coworker who's doing the match. The guy who's working for the match, who's putting up the $4,000 and getting the extra $6,000, he's making $106,000 and you're making $100,000. You are leaving money on the table if you don't do at least the match. So always, if they say match in your employee contract or your HR benefits, you want to do that because you want to get that money because it's usually, there's no absolutes. It varies from company to company. Another thing about that though too is there'll probably be some sort of coercion or whatever you want to call it where there's a vesting program. Vesting means, okay, yeah, you get a 6% match. We're going to give you an extra, whatever, $6,000 every year, but you quit after 6 months, you get none of it. You quit after a year, you get 10%. You quit after 2 years, you get 20%. 3 years. Usually it takes until 5 years and then you're vested, fully vested. And fully vested means you get to, if you depart, you get to take all of that with you. And another thing about this though, when you're talking about taking all this with you, you want to, it's just the terminology is key. You want to roll it over. You never want to get a disbursement, anything where you have a check with your name on it directly. If you're, let's say you're working for one company, you've got your retirement benefits built up, and you decide you're going to quit and go work for somebody else, and they say, well, you've got your retirement plan. You say, yeah, just cut me a check. You have just done what they call a disbursement. You have taken that money out of a retirement account and you've taken it as cash, which means that you owe the IRS 10% penalty and all that money gets added to your income, which means the IRS will take even more of it. If you say, yeah, I'm going to roll that over into my next account, and so you get a check and it'll say whatever, Jim Parker, well, say for the benefit of Jim Parker, TD Ameritrade or somebody like that, or Fidelity or whoever, and you can't cash that check. You can't go into a bank and cash that, but you take it to your chosen brokerage firm, your financial company, and they roll it into another retirement account, and it stays in that same status. And it's critical. Most HR people will know that, but you do hear some nightmare stories where people literally, I want my money, and oh boy, you get your money and you get the penalties and everything else as well. So that's what they're talking about here. The penalty is imposed for early withdrawal. It's 10%. There may be, they may also construe that sentence as being a penalties involved if you're not vested. Because again, if you're not vested, that's a completely private agreement between you and the company. Your contributions are tax deferred, but tax as ordinary income when withdrawn after retirement. Which again, the strategy here is you do the tax deferred, so you set aside a certain chunk of your income, and your AGI, your adjusted gross income, is lowered by that amount. You don't pay taxes on it. Pardon me. And then when you're in retirement, you will be taxed on it, but hopefully it's a little less. And again, the only exception to that is the Roth, and I'll talk about Roths later on, ROTH. But IRAs, 401ks, thrift savings plans, 403bs, all that stuff is all tax deferred, and 529s for education and other things. So defined benefit plan, these are like old school. Not going to probably find those. Employee sponsored retirement plan that guarantees you a specific amount of income. Maybe like in the public sector you might find these, But again, that's why these are very expensive, and that's why, municipalities are going broke. Vested, this is that notion of having a claim to a portion of the money after you leave the company. So again, most vesting programs are kind of like what I said. Defined contribution. So again, these are kind of old school. And the other problem with these ones, if you went to work for GM and you had this great retirement plan, and you're going to work for GM for 30 years, the problem is GM might not be around 30 years, and then you're really screwed. So you could lose it all. So it's with the fluid nature of companies, some of these old school plans are maybe not the best. If it's a municipality, unless they go bankrupt, you're going to be all right. We know all this. Not some people, it's more like most people wait too long to save. Start saving at an early age. Every paycheck. So all this is, what we talked about from the start. Pay yourself first. They're talking about this defined contribution plan, and it's not always, what they're talking about here is more like a match type program where money contributed by the employer is like extra income, and it certainly is. Encourages employees to save and offers tax deferred income. So when most people talk about employee sponsored plans, I mean, it can range from everything. It can range from a set retirement plan to just sort of a cafeteria plan where these are the funds that are available. UAA does it with a match. I think theirs is maybe 3 or 4%. And another company I work for is same sort of thing. It pretty much it's kind of industry or whatever workforce wide where there's some sort of match program. So you really need to make a priority to meet the match at a minimum. To set more money aside is always good, but your first priority is to hit that match amount to get that extra money. I do kind of a silly thing. It's kind of a lot of work, but it's very. I don't know. It seems like a lot of work, a lot of moving parts. But I do an employee stock purchase program because they give me a 5% discount on the shares, and then I buy them and I sell them the next day. It's probably not what the company had in mind, but I buy them for whatever 5% discount. I sell them for full price the next day. It's I did the math. I make roughly $1,000 extra doing that, a year. And I could have made more money. The company's actually their price is going up. I could have made more money by buying and holding, but I don't. But anyway, if look for these little niche kind of things that your company offers that are ways to increase your income. I don't work any harder, and I make one phone call every 3 months. Not even a phone call. I just make one little web transaction every 3 months, and it's $1,000. So, composition and retirement portfolio. So, yeah, this is that same sort of theory. These are not absolutes, but they're showing when you're, young, high risk, getting older, more medium risk, and by the time you're 70, okay, I might be in low risk, but even then, if you get a nest egg built up and you're good at picking stocks, you can do all right. I'm not a genius, and I'm making 22% on all my stuff this year. So, it's pretty favorable economic times, but you got to do well in the favorable economic times, because when the bad times come, you're not going to make it. So, anyway, I should probably be in the low risk. I'm not that old, but anyway, but I'm not going to. Not when I'm getting, good percentage. What the heck? Each to his own. So 401k. So 401k, I think I've talked about this. These numbers are going to change. They changed, so this is 2018. Right now it's up to like 20. And if you're in that 50 or older, you're in the catch-up range, so you can go up to like 25 or even more. So this is a smart way of doing things. The other thing about these, and I've got 3 loans out right now against my own retirement savings, because you can take loans against it. If you ever need money and you're going to borrow, I needed some equipment for resale for my business. I took a loan basically from myself. I pay like 3 or 4% interest, but the interest goes back to me. So once you have money in a 401k, you have the mechanism to borrow against that money. And it's completely different. Transparent to the IRS. They never even get notified. It's completely different than withdrawing money from your 401. You're just borrowing against it. They set up some sort of payroll deduction, for 2 to 5 years, whatever it is, and the money rolls back in there. But it gives you another means. And then there's also some hardship type things that, you have a medical emergency or something like that, you need money in a hurry. If you've got your retirement account, you borrow against it. And it's you don't have to go to a bank. You don't have to do any of that. Yes, please.
Can you take a loan out of your IRA as well?
IRAs, yeah, IRAs, I haven't been doing IRAs much lately because you get to, not that, again, I'm not that high, but I'm no longer eligible for deductible IRAs, and the limits are not that high. And IRAs from the get-go are like, IRAs and 401ks are very similar in the way the mechanism for them. I think you'll find that you'll be more in the 401ks because you can go up to 20 grand. IRA is like 2 grand. I mean, it's these little bits and chunks. So my property, I mean, it's transparent. I had 401k money and I bought some property and now they define it as an IRA. And they don't care. But yeah, you could potentially borrow money against your IRA.
But there's not much more money.
Yeah, you're probably not apt to have that much money in your IRA. But you can borrow against, the broader answer to your question would, yes, you can borrow against your tax deferred accounts. So wherever you got the money, that's the place to do it.
So the best way of borrowing money.
I mean, I do it all the time.
Yourself.
And it's not like, oh God, I got loans outstanding. I owe the money to myself.
What's the maximum you can
50,000. But they don't track it. I'm just saying, maybe I made a little mistake and I ended up with like 60 out at one point. It's all done. I mean, I paid it back, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And I mean, there's no IRS reporting on it. Maybe I was lucky or something, and I'm down below the 50,000 threshold. The other bit about it is you cannot go, typically, I think the rule is you can't go over 50% of the account. So you can't have like 51,000 and borrow 50. If you want to borrow 50, you'd have to have 100 in there. But I'm just saying, you've got options. You need that nest egg. You need that kind of wherewithal. Things get very expensive. If you get on the wrong side of the economic power curve, it's hard to dig yourself out. If you're, can manage to put away a little, I mean, it's like anything in life. When you're down, you get further down. If the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that's it. I mean, but you're young enough and you have control to make sure that you're not in that segment. So, matching contributions, we talked about that. So again, they were defining that as important. Whatever. We're not going to get in that sort of weirdness on the test. Just keep in mind the concept. You could potentially, in this case, if you're 50, and I'm saying the limit's 25,000 or so, you could be making 100 grand, and when you go to pay your taxes, you would go to the tax, tables as somebody making 75,000, which is considerably less painful. And also, deducting IRAs and deducting this and that, when you hit certain limits, my daughter was going to school out of state. And I'm thinking, well, at least it's tax deductible. No, it's not. Not based upon your income level. And believe me, it doesn't take much to hit that income level. So anyway, it's you were the good deduction programs. They cut off at any kind of much above average income. So. Taxes on money. Yeah, so if you happen to do this, if you just pull the money out, withdrawn, that's a distribution. We're not withdrawing. We're taking a loaning on it. But if you do withdraw it, if you say, I absolutely have to do this money, and I did this one time also because it was kind of a hardship. My daughter was in a private school, and it was an ugly situation, and I wasn't going to have her pulled out midterm in high school, so I pulled money out, and yeah, I paid for it. I paid a 10% penalty, and I paid a little bit more. But whatever, you can work it out.
Is it 10% of the amount you take out?
10% of the amount, and then the full amount goes to your taxes. So, yep. Now, see the Roth. So the Roth it's not even the same sort of concept. It's called an IRA, but it will confuse you because it's different than Roth 401k, IRA. Anyway, if you see Roth in front of it, Roth is obviously a politician's name who authored it. But what happens in that case is the tax, the money you put into that investment is already taxed. So, if you get no immediate benefit. you know, but you have, say, a few $1,000s extra or whatever extra, and you put it into a Roth account. If you agree to put it into a Roth account, you've basically put a fence around it. It is now going to be, you are going to be penalized if you pull that money out. But whatever proceeds you make on that investment, you know, assuming you wait till pull it out till retirement, it's going to be tax free. So I've got a chunk of land up by Long Lake that it's all Roth money, and it's not that valuable, but they're changing the road. They're routing the road around the south side of Long Lake, so the property could, you know, go up in value quite a bit. And then whatever money I make on that will be completely tax-free because it's a Roth. So property is kind of unusual. I mean, there's not too many people who do that. But it's mutual funds or something like that, if you had it in a Roth. All that money you make under a Roth is, the taxes were already paid on it, and, you know, capital gains the capital gains will not be taxed. So it's pretty cool. 403B, kind of same sort of thing, is just for nonprofits. So mainly, there's not that many nonprofits, but there's a whole lot of people working for educational type things, universities, stuff like that. So that's where you see 403B. But you'll see those limits change all the time. Another type, simplified employee plan, a SEP. So if you're somebody who's got a small company, you can do this. You can do a lot of things. The surveyor who worked for me, I hired him to do the property. He set up, you know, he had some employees and he was setting up stuff, and he found out how I was buying the property, and he decided to do that for his employees. So there's lots of flexibility. Yep. Simple. So again, another, you know, different category of employees. What they're trying to say here is it's not so important that you memorize, you know, SEPs and simples and 401ks and IRAs and all the rest of it. It's just keep in mind that there are tax deferred investment programs out there for pretty much any organization, any entity, and you probably want to take advantage of it. You know, and contrarian type people might say, well, wait a minute, the taxes are going to go up, you know, massively 20 years down the road, you know, because I'm talking about financial doom and gloom. And if that were the case, having money in a 401k might actually work against you, because when you go to pull those taxes out, the taxes might be higher. I don't think that's quite as likely. The concept is that you are not going to be working at that time, and your tax rate is going to be quite a bit lower. But anyway, profit sharing, another type of retirement plan, where, you know, the companies, another way for basically for the employers to provide a retirement as a means of incentivizing the employees to stay around. And employee stock ownership. This is sort of a smaller thing and more risky because it's not diversified. Yeah, but you know, unless there's some caveat that you got to keep it in stock. You know, let's say you're working for General Motors and you get a certain percentage of your retirement is all in GM stock. Yeah, I'd be a little nervous about that, but there's nothing, to my mind, to prevent you from, you know, selling that and diversifying. So, not necessarily a problem. Managing your retirement account after leaving your employer. So, as we all know, you know, people tend to not stick with the same company, you know, for their entire career. You may transfer to a new employer and then it'll roll over. So there's some nasty, nasty things that I found out with UAA in particular, where what happened was I had a pretty good sized military retirement, a TSP, which is like a 401k type thing, completely compatible with the UAA plan. So I got my money from there and I rolled it into the university plan, and then all of a sudden the university kind of exercised control over my retirement plan. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not money I earned when I was working for you. And it got quite heated, quite ugly. This was about a year ago now. I actually resigned from the university. I'm like, I'm done. They said, well, you can't withdraw that money if you're still an employee. I'm like, I'm a friggin' adjunct. It's not quite the same as a, because before when I worked for the university, I was full time and I was in a retirement plan. I'm like, I'm more like an adjunct guy. I'm a part timer. You don't tell me I'm, working for the university in the traditional sense. Well, yes, and by our means you are. I'm like, well, I can fix that in a hurry. I quit. And I'm like, you know what? And so actually, I talked to the students. I said, I am going to continue to teach on a volunteer basis for the rest of the term, but per the university guidelines, I need to retire. And it got kind of funny. Because they're not used to dealing, because they're used to people, hanging on. And again, it's not that, but I'm not loaded, but I did have, a little bit of FU money where I could just go, this is how it's going to happen, and this is what I'm doing, and I'll volunteer for a while. So anyway, you got to be careful with all that stuff. I probably would have been better in just rolling it into an independent plan and not affiliating it with the new company where they thought they somehow had some control over it. But anyway, but this rollover IRA, rollover 401k, rollover whatever, an individual retirement account into which you can transfer your assets from one company to the other one while avoiding penalties. So rollover is the operative term. Disbursement is the negative term. And you will know whether you got this right if you get a check that has your name on it, your name only. You have generated a taxable event that is pretty much irreversible. So don't do that. You want it to be a rollover situation. Because they want their 10% right then. They will take it, and it would just be not good. Keogh, another one where, again, another politician. But again, it's how to you can set this up. And again, just because it's in an IRA account or a 401k account, it really isn't that much different, to you. You can have both personal savings, personal investment accounts, and ones that are characterized as an IRA. The money does not go back and forth. They're separate buckets. The money doesn't transfer from one to the other, but they're kind of operated the same. And like a lot of the stocks and stuff I buy, in fact, 90% of the stocks and stuff I buy are under the retirement side. I've got a self-directed IRA or self-directed 401k. But the funny thing is, and this was what I was getting back to this 22%, I've got the company will match 10% of my income. So they're putting in, or not 10%, I put in 4, they put in 6. So 10% of my income every year is being added to this one account. And the particulars of this account are only 50% of it can be self-directed. So in theory, the one account where it's all mutual funds, that they limited choices and all that account should be growing every year, outdoing my self-directed one, which can't take any new money. But because their mutual fund choices are kind of lackluster and my stock choosing skills are a bit better than theirs, I can't add any money to my other account because it's like at 60% and their account is only at 40%, even though it's got money being added to it, just because I think they're being more conservative than they should. But anyway, there's all kinds of options with what you can do. On your own personal investment, if it's not retirement funds, you're almost unlimited. If it's the part held under the company, under the 401k, there may be some constraints, but just the same, you need to be smart on that and figure out what your limits are. So again, SEP, I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but they're all just different variants. It has to do with the different number of employees. Traditional IRAs, obviously it's up to $5,500 per year, so it can get a little bit higher, and you can do the withdrawals against it, but it's not as high as the 401k. But same sort of limits, 59.5. And 59.5, you start taking withdrawals, and that's if you want to do that. There is like a maximum limit, I think it's 70, where you actually have to start taking money.
Yeah,
And there's actually people too, there's politicians out there who think this is just far too good a deal and needs to be eliminated. The government's getting shortchanged. So
Well, when they stop making as much money as they do, then.
yeah. But I mean, I'm always looking for things that the politicians are complaining are too painful, that people are getting too good a deal on. That's probably something you want to be involved in.
Yeah.
If they feel like they need to shut it down because people are getting too wealthy, that's probably a hint that it probably is a reasonable deal.
You shouldn't be talking.
And this is the Roth one, retirement plan, specific income limits. So again, you can't do it forever. But anyway, 5,500, 11,000. It's probably up a little bit more now. Catch up payments a bit, but income tax at the time of the contribution. So it's after tax money, but not taxed when withdrawn. Now those income limitations, that's just for the money going in. You can be a millionaire when you go to pull the money out. It's still not going to affect. You're not going to be taxed. Advantages. Yeah, this is some strategizing. That the rules are not that complex. It just comes down to what you think is a good deal. What do you think the forecast is? And certainly you can have them both. So I ended up with the Roth, and I'm pretty happy with that. But I've got the other ones too, just because the limits are quite a bit higher. Again, if you're making much money at all, you can't contribute to a Roth anymore. Marginal tax rates at the time of your contribution and withdrawal. Yep. So a lot of moving parts there. And if you're gonna be somebody who's not gonna retire at all and keep working into the retirement, into the retirement age, then yeah, the advantages are maybe a little bit less. But yeah, trying to forecast what the tax rates are going to be when you retire, that's going to be difficult. All right. Do we want to talk about annuities? Let's take a break and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little about annuities. All right?
Sure.
Yep. Shit.